with Dr. Katie yesterday. She said the meditation. So we'll just be breathing together and just close the eyes and relax. All of us are good meditators. And now we are together to experience the spacious nature that is who we are as awareness. So closing your eyes and breathing, allowing the exhale to take you deeper and the inhale to feed the meditative state, to open into the heart, out of the mind and into the heart. So the nature of meditation is anytime that your mind is not engaged, anytime that you're not thinking, you are in this space that we call meditation. And that's the space where we know ourselves as one, we know ourselves as awake, as aware, and that fullness of that is always available. And that's the blessing, that's the amazing grace of this open, spacious connection to ourselves, and in that space, know ourselves as one. And so it is.
Now we'll just go into 5 minutes of silence. Pat is joined, and Janine and Kim and Nina and Laura and Sherry have all joined.
Great. And who's here?
Sue.
Hi, Sue.
Less.
Les. Nice to meet you. Hi, Gina. I'm so glad you're here.
Grace, you know.
Yep.
Deborah.
Mhm.
Neuro.
So I thought today it might be helpful for everybody to just for me to talk about the approach that this teaching that I share with all of you and that I offer, the method and the and what I often call the kindergarten model, but it's a version of what they call in the Advaita the indirect path. My experience for this body-mind unit, my experience identified as this body-mind unit over the years, got me to a place where there was something that had to fall away in order for there not to be any more identification with a limited self. And that happened about 13 years ago. And it was something had to be gone because I'd been, as most of us, all of us here probably, I had been on a direct path of commitment to awakening, commitment to true nature, commitment to being free and to be in full expression. But there was always something that was held. I think of it as a kind of a knot in consciousness. The teachers of the direct path are very powerful. My favorite one is Rupert Spira, who does this beautiful job of describing awareness and our access to it. And that as that is revealed and experienced and acknowledged by us, we literally create our knowing of ourselves as true nature, as awake awareness. What I find, because I've worked with people who have done not just his, but many workshops with a direct path, is that if there's still anything in the way, and what I mean by anything that would be in the way is a limited personal identity. We usually find at the heart of those some version of I'm not good enough or I don't matter. We know all of those. Most of us here, I could probably say all of us, have done therapy on that for many decades, right? The therapeutic model doesn't work because it's as if we invest in the error, we invest in the limitation, in the fear-based identity with the attention and therapy on it. It's not that it doesn't shift it for a while, because there is a range. The range of the mind, as we know, is a polarity with good at one end and bad at the other. And so the therapeutic model, we move through that, maybe to the good end of that stick, but we're still caught at the level of an identity issue. Most everybody here knows that I found a technology, the name of it is the 6 Steps to Freedom process, that I found to be most helpful. Before that, when I was working with people, I used Ho'oponopono because I found within my own experience that forgiveness was the alchemy of releasing attachment and identification with that early inserted ego identity, that fear-based identity. That forgiveness is the solvent. The 6 Steps to Freedom process is a very specific, and it seems to be linear, but it opens, each step opens and opens. And the last step in it is to forgive yourself for ever having concluded whatever is revealed in the 6 steps. So that's one aspect of the teaching that I do. That's the tool that I use, and I found it to be really incisive and very much to the point. And it is alchemical. Forgiveness is alchemical. Like I said before, I had the 6 steps to freedom process. I use the Hawaiian Ho'oponopono, which most of you are aware of, and that is a forgiveness alchemy also. The other thing that I realized that happens, and it had to be seen and shifted out of in the experience of this body mind 13 years ago, is that when that wounded conclusion gets installed, we necessarily abandon ourselves on behalf of an external reality that in our experience created that wound. So now we are caught in the projection of I'm not good enough, which creates a distortion field. This is all my kindergarten model, as you know, creates a distortion field, and we interact through that lens or that distortion field from the identity of that conclusion. If the conclusion is I'm not good enough or I don't matter, then the way the distortion field works from that information, that's the power of consciousness. And the way the distortion field works is to show up with incidences and apparent others who play their part in having us live out of that conclusion. When that's going on, the 6 steps can kick in, but because that is what we call, that's what we call a trigger. The part that I came upon about working at the level of where the projection occurred is that what in that self-abandonment, the opportunity is to come home to ourselves. And I often say that when we believe that I'm not good enough and I'm now magnetized into an external, authenticity flew out the window. It's no longer available to us, because what we will begin to do, and this is another part of this whole diagram of the teaching, what we will begin to do is create adaptive behaviors to try to be the good girl, or try to hide, or try to do something in the relationship that we believe is incumbent upon us to the external, looking like siblings, looking like parents, looking like circumstances that are against us. So with that, all of that being said, that gets us to the practice itself. Are there any questions about those, any in here or in the Zoom room? Any questions about those that it may not have been clear what I was describing? Most everybody in here has worked with me using this protocol.
I don't see any questions.
You see any?
No.
Any questions in here? Okay. So the next part is the way this kind of two-pronged, the way that we go about it. The 6 steps to freedom, I'll go over. The first step is I'm triggered, I'm upset. So that's what alerts you to the possibility of moving through this protocol and revealing what got installed, maybe at 6 months old, maybe prenatally, maybe at 3 years old. And from that point, whenever that was that occurred, then it's been playing out in your reality. This is a frequency reality. And as that frequency of I'm not good enough, sometimes the prenatal experience is if the mother carrying the fetus considers abortion, the fetus will have the energy input of I don't deserve to live. So that's already in there. It may end up being a failure to thrive. It may end up being a kind of whatever shutdown it comes up, but that's already installed by the time the baby's born. So the 6 steps go like this. Like I think all of you in here may be tired of it, but it's important. And I never get tired of doing it with somebody. The first, the alert to do the 6 steps is I'm triggered, I'm upset, right? So and I always point out that any little thing or big thing, there is no degree of possibility. The smallest trigger can go, using that to go through the steps can reveal a deeply hidden and very powerful self-concept that it doesn't seem to relate to the trigger. So the first step is I'm triggered, I'm upset. The second step is to acknowledge that that upset is about me. So even though in that upset, what's likely to be going on is that there's an apparent other who's mistreating you, leaving you out, not calling you, berating you, engaging you hostilely, whatever that is. It's the second step is powerful because, and in a lot of the therapeutic work that all of us have done, we have come to that place of understanding that it's about me. My upset is about me. So that's the second step. The third step is to name the feeling of that upset as I know, as I experience it as me. It feels like fear. It feels like what might be some of it? Help me out, guys.
Anger, rejection,
Rejection. Yeah.
guilt,
Guilt.
self-doubt.
Yeah. Self-doubt. Yeah. So whatever that feeling is, when we come upon it, and it's sort of like is very specific to the trigger that just happened, then using that feeling as a touchstone, we allow ourselves through free association to the memory of the first or earliest time, maybe not the earliest time, but a prior time when we had the same experience of that feeling. This will often take one back to a scene with mommy and not showing up to pick me up from kindergarten on time, or me believing that somebody's there to take care of me and then finding out that nobody's there. It'll take us back to a scene or an experience that correlates to the feeling that the triggered upset evoked. So it's like this, now we've got a line that's going from what happened in the present moment into the experience and feeling of it, and having that evoke an early experience, because you don't get triggered unless there's a wound attached to it. So the fourth step is in that early experience to explore that, if I'm doing the facilitation, or if anybody's doing it with yourself, is to allow yourself to really be in that scene. It's like to be in the scene where something you expected didn't happen, or daddy said he was coming to pick you up and he never showed up. Whatever that scene is, to really be in that scene. Because the fifth step is out of that recalled experience is to get in touch with that little one, or that 8-year-old or 6-year-old, whatever, to get in touch through that experience with what you concluded that meant about you. So when mommy doesn't show up to pick you up on time, or daddy doesn't show up at all, or you're left alone and you feel scared, when that happened, that occurrence, that experience led you to conclude that meant something about you. And this is what I consider to be the installation of the wounded identity. That's then out of which our reality shows up through that lens. It's what creates the distortion field, right? Once we've gotten that conclusion, that self-definition, that self-judgment, the next step is to forgive ourselves, I forgive myself for ever having believed that I was not good enough. I know who I am, and to do whatever works for you to acknowledge and express your true nature. I am the awake awareness in which all realities arise. Whatever works for you. So that's the 6 steps to freedom process. And I'm glad to do it with anybody in here, who wants to do that today. The second step, the second part of the work and the way I go about it has to do with how do you behave once you have believed that towards yourself, because that's at the heart of the matter, even though it's going to be repressed right away, is the fundamental self-rejection. So at that point, now you believe that something out there, mommy not feeding you on time or not picking you up on time, that's what caused you to feel so sad, so fearful, so angry. So now it's like you're magnetized towards the external, because in that experience, the external was cause in the matter of your conclusion. Making sense to everybody? Yeah, no, yeah. Yeah. So at that point, what happens is that you will begin to use whatever gifts you have. You know, if you're an infant who's always been demanding, now you might think, I'm going to just be a goo goo gaga smiley baby, and maybe they'll come back or something. But you might think that if I'm a happy and sharing and fun person, when daddy gets home after he's been drinking, maybe he won't hit mommy, right? So you start to use what you think about or know about yourself and on behalf of this external world that now is feeling really, really scary. So the attention goes out there. So you're no longer freely expressing from your true nature, or even whatever pattern you may have come in with karmically. You're expressing from a reaction and trying to create some way to avoid experiencing what just happened to you. And so our attention particles are now magnetized into the external. And so I sometimes say it should be a country western song, because it could be looking for love in all the wrong places, right? Now your attention is out there. You've got to get something out there or avoid something out there in order to be okay. Yeah, makes sense?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so those are the 6 steps to discover what that conclusion was that got installed. Now, the other part of it is to start to risk, because it'll feel risky. We're doing the work on the identity to dissolve it, to see through forgiveness that it was never true. The next part of that is to begin to be authentic in the face of your fear that it will cost you a friendship, or it'll cost you a love, or it'll cost you connection with a dear one. To start to tell the truth, to come home to ourselves, to become authentic in the middle of a reality that implies or insists that if you're authentic, you're going to be in trouble. So this is pretty much the model for the work, to undo what stands between you and the truth of who you already are. We do not have to create that we are awake awareness. That's already in place. We do not have to create that we are loving and powerful and creative. That's already who we are. What we have to do is to get out of the way all of the creation of a fear-based identity that we've lived from in this lifetime. Meister Eckhart, who was a mystic monk at the end of the Dark Ages, said that the spiritual journey is a matter of subtraction. And we find that it's true, as everything that's not us is allowed to be dispelled, is seen through and dissolved. We find ourselves present as the awareness that we are, as the awake awareness that we are. And from that place, because, and I always get it too complicated, don't I? The place that we get to from allowing this to be dissolved, to seeing through this, is that the frequency that is at cause in the matter of how our reality shows up begins to be lighter. It begins to be love. It begins to be free. It begins to be a higher frequency than the frequency that was emitted when our minds were caught up in the belief that we don't matter or we're not good enough. So we literally change our world as our minds drop, and the clearing in the mind clears the distortion field. And now we're present in our own reality, on our own behalf, in peace and joy and love. That's the whole story.
Pali,
Is that?
Deborah.
You just went over this and I've heard it before, but could you again go over this sixth step?
Sure. Yeah, everybody gets them when they get the email for the Zoom, I think, but maybe not the elaborated form. You can also YouTube search for Choose Again or Dietrich Walsack, who was the originator of this protocol, and you can see him using them. But the 6 steps are: I'm triggered, I'm upset. The second step is it's about me. This is the opening into power and freedom, right? Because if it's about you, you've got it. You can do what needs to be done. If it's about them, you're pretty much screwed, because they're never going to change, right? You're pretty sure of that. So the second step is it's about me. The third step is to identify the feeling. With feeling words, it feels scary, it feels contracted, I feel shut down, it feels like anger. The fourth step is to use that feeling to allow, reassociate the earliest time that you experienced that feeling. The fifth step is to realize or to see or to allow what you believed about yourself when you had that feeling experience earlier, the memory that came up. When that happened, you concluded something about yourself. And that's a little bit of an exploration in there that you'll get used to doing it yourself, but I facilitate that. And the sixth step is the forgiveness. So it's an alchemical process. It's not therapeutic. It's the allowing of the use of the rational analytic mind to move out of itself, out of the rational analytic, into the feeling realm, and the arising there of identities, fear-based identities.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
What I actually meant to ask for was, could you go over step number 6 a little, to say more words about step number 6?
So step number 6 is I
Yeah.
forgive myself for ever having believed, fill in the blank. I forgive myself. I think it's helpful, and everybody may have a slightly different version of what their sense of their true nature is. But step number 6 is I forgive myself for believing that, which was the installing of a limited self-concept. I'm not good enough, I don't matter, whatever that was. It's literally like it got installed. We talk about it psychologically as being repressed. Now it's been brought into the light. Forgiveness is like sunlight on mold. So it's like now you've got I don't matter, and right in front of you, right? It's been retrieved from where it was hidden and shoved away. And you can see it right there. I forgive myself for ever having believed that. In order to do that authentically and with the alchemy that's required to dissolve it, you have to have seen it in that space of that conclusion. what did you conclude that meant about you when you experienced it? I concluded that I'm bad. So if you're looking at that scene out of which you acknowledged and re-experienced I'm bad, and you're seeing that as the scene and seeing how it was a conclusion that was unavoidable but not true, then you move into the forgiveness. So the forgiveness, I think, has two parts. One is I forgive myself for believing something that could never be true. And the other part is I know who I am. I am the awake, for me, it's I am the awake awareness in which all realities arise, including this body-mind. So this positions me as awareness, and in a way, we've done this before in meditation, back here, right? And this body-mind and all of this apparent reality is arising in the consciousness that I am. What that does is it reminds us of the power of true nature, of awareness. I think I even got off track that time, but was that enough about
It was,
forgiveness?
thank you. You didn't get off track. Thank you.
Yeah, so we have the opportunity to grok, because it's more than just understanding mentally, to actually know by that who we are is awareness. Everything else is a creation. If you can see it, it's not who you are. Right? It's what you've got. Now, from that perspective, now you have the ability to be kind to that aspect of your early identity conclusion, because it's for sure a child. It may be even earlier than that. So it's like being with that child now from the perspective of the awareness that is my true nature. I'm in a different relationship to it. We think about the wounded child, and I don't like to make, I don't want to make this separation because it really isn't. But it's the way to describe that dynamic of that aspect of us. It was so young and that got mistreated, that was abused in whatever way, even if it was just psychologically, the way of it was that we concluded I don't matter. So the child gets shut down, and then it becomes the one that creates the adaptive behaviors of I can be cute and funny and entertain daddy when he's drunk or whatever it is. So what needs to happen is, even though this is not literal, there is inner child work to do where you say, I am here now. I am as awareness, the one you've been waiting for. And that child will become, as we say, the child that enters the kingdom of heaven. That's the child that goes like, oh, wow, I'm not bad. I'm not, yeah.
Yeah. I have a question, Pali.
Who's that?
It's Ajay.
Ajay. Thank you.
So let's say you were in a setting where you were speaking to someone who didn't have a spiritual reference or background, and you couldn't use terms like true nature.
Right.
And you had 5 minutes to give someone a practice where they could have an experience of their true nature.
Mm-hmm.
What would you suggest?
Well, according to the setting, you can say, are you aware of that? Or what are you aware of? Who's aware? It's just like going into that area, because what turns out is that awareness is not what you can see with your eyes. It's the awareness of the body-mind unit. So if they are up for or open to the experience of what are objects and what is my awareness, I am aware, right? And that might be a high bar also. But what would be your purpose? What would they have?
I'm creating some curriculum right now
Okay,
in a more clinical setting.
got it. Yeah.
And so we can't really use, I
Uh-huh.
mean, I can refer to true nature as a term used
Mhm.
in more of a spiritual tradition. But yeah, it's giving them a practice or an experience inside of sort of a clinical or therapeutic
Right.
context.
So I would probably use awake awareness. You're awake and you're aware of this. Anything that you're aware of, if you can see it, you're having the experience that I am not that. It's an object, right? So it's kind of going down that road. So that the distinction, which is a primary one in terms of waking up, for sure. And knowing oneself as I am this, and I've got this and this, right? But I am the awake awareness that groks, knows, experience, the experience is in the awareness of it. But everything that can come and go.
That's kind of what I was using is you are that which is the space that all that comes and goes arises inside of.
Did that not land well?
I mean, it works for me. I was just curious.
Yeah, and I think it'll often work for people. It's really interesting about language. It's like oftentimes we and I especially, try to make things simple. I call everything I teach a kindergarten model because I want it to be just where the rubber meets the road. But the reality that I found in 13 years of doing this teaching is that if they're open to it, it lands. And it doesn't matter if the language would be something that they would have recognized. The recognition comes from consciousness. And if they're sitting there with you, then it's like, and you can experience it, right? Like
Transmitted.
yeah. And you can make the models of it. It's like if I can put it in my lap, if I can hold it in my hand, if I can see it, it's clearly an object. Objects all come and go. What doesn't come and go?
I like this discussion, but and I'm more even fascinated by her words, which were, how would you describe your true nature? Is that the question? Your true nature?
Well,
Is that-
it's not even describing,
Or how-
it's actually giving them an experiential practice
How that-
to have a direct experience of their true nature
Right.
So I was gonna
in a
ask,
short amount of time.
Right.
if you weren't gonna use awareness as the single reflector of that, like if you were gonna lead them in with other words or other simple ways to tune into what is that? What is it that I'm made of? What is it that's truly here? Other than awareness, is there like descriptive things that might this might illuminate what am I really? And I don't know, I'm just messing around with this right now.
Right. Yeah, that's difficult. I don't find that, well, I don't typically, if I'm with anybody or they're in front of me, it's because awareness would be of the expression, but awareness is not unknown by people. I mean, the general population is aware that they're aware, right? And so that I don't think the word awareness is off-putting. Consciousness might be, and there may be some discussion around the nature of consciousness because, oh, I was on anesthesia, I was unconscious, I was, if everything's consciousness, is the chair conscious? I mean, there's a lot of disturbance with the word consciousness, I found. Awareness, not so much. I'm either aware of it or I'm not. Now my hand's there, now I can't see it, I'm not aware of it.
I want to make sure that people on Zoom are, welcome to raise your hands as well and have Polly, have an interaction with Polly or have a question. You can click on the reaction button and raise your hand and I'll see it and call on you, as well as people in the room here.
Not to open.
Thad and Linda. So let's start with Thad and then we'll go to Thad, Linda, then Nina. Okay, Thad, you're up.
Hi,
I just
sweetie.
hi, sweetie. I just wanted to add a thought about AI in regard to all this, which is a lot of what I think people take away from AI as a threat to human uniqueness is interesting in this respect of the first time the big blue beat the chess player, the first time a computer the stature, the status of chess declined. It lost status, and everything that we exteriorize can be replicated or perceived as a pattern and replicated. Everything that we express has a sort of status that is not us anymore,
Right.
in an interesting way that I think is not appreciated in a general sense, because there's an attachment to what we do that's an egoistic attachment. So if I say, well, I'm writing a novel now, and it would really bum me out if I could just, if what I'm working on could be replicated by a computer.
Right.
And and on another level, I look at what I'm writing and I think, well, it is analyzable in terms of patterns, and surely that's possible. And I have to release my egoistic attachment to it as an expression of some uniqueness, right? So I guess what I'm trying to say is this whole discussion around AI is another way of looking at the ways in which what we exteriorize or express is not us. And so in a way, it doesn't matter that what I write can be replicated by a machine, because it just doesn't matter. What I write doesn't matter in the way that we're typically encouraged to think of it as being an extension of my uniqueness or an extension of my talent, or anything that justifies or rather credentializes or kind of creates the basis for my existence. My existence is not predicated on what I do or create or say or earn. My existence is already established and inviolable, but by attaching ourselves to what we exteriorize, we fall into the trap of that's the fall, basically.
Right, exactly.
I mean, it's what you say in terms of the magnetizing by the exterior world, which I think is so continuous and so seductive and so much like this eternal process that we're having to eternally relinquish. And the new terms of that relinquishment is AI, I guess. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that whole thing about the externalization, because AI is creating out of the language, actually, which is the pairs of opposites, right? It's creating something out there, and that's been our domain. So the threat is there if you still identify with that as the domain of your true nature. The possibility here is that we've been caught up, like my little kindergarten model of the first AI was the Garden of Eden, right? But prior to that, the way that we knew, which we are still capable of, and AI isn't, is to be one with, to connect with, to experience as, yeah.
Right.
Thanks.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the thing that the AI cannot have, but we wouldn't care either way, is just pure awareness without any expressivity attached to it that could be replicable. So in other words, the state of consciousness where it doesn't matter to me is also the state of consciousness where I cease to exist as Thad, and I'm simply, and my whole investment as an ego identity is dissolved.
Right, exactly.
And so I'm not even thinking in terms of individual consciousness at all. Right. And that's the space in which an AI is welcome to come or go, because there's no differences.
Right.
You know, there's no differences that are possible in that. And that's probably not even human. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I mean, we're always casting about for a place where we're going to have this unique human thing, humanities or whatever. And if the irony is that the highest possible expression isn't even
that's right,
definable as human.
Because once the ego's gone, that's the whole deal.
That's it. Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to
Nice.
to say that to you because I know we've been talking about AI.
Right.
lately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mhm.
Okay, thank you, Thad. Linda. And then Nina.
Who's this here?
Linda.
Oh, Linda. Hi, Linda.
Hi, Polly. I got a little lost in that last, but I think I can
Just hang in there.
Like, with Chad. I have something I could do the 6-step process on.
Great. Let's do it.
So I'm gonna want to keep the story really short. So I have a client. I would call this my most difficult client, who didn't show this week. Haven't heard from them. Don't know if he's taken his life, if he's coming. And I'm the trigger is changing. I'm going from being worried to just being pissed off. Like I'm angry. It's like, yes. I mean, this is really good progress for me to be angry.
Yeah.
I have you probably can't see, but I have a visitor here who's in front of me. It's my kitty cat. So you might hear some.
Okay.
Anyway, so I'm mad.
Second step.
And I know it's about me. And I, as I was listening to it, I said, oh my God, this client who's been such a pain in my, has been my biggest gift.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, this is like my freedom is like at stake here.
So the feeling that you have, the most visceral feeling, the real gut feeling that you have, and this dynamic is what's one word for it? Anger is a secondary emotion, so we don't usually go.
So I'm angry and I'm feeling, I mean, it's this feeling of just inconsequential. Yeah, I feel devalued, not seen, unappreciated, taken advantage of. That's stronger. I feel like I'm being taken advantage of.
So do you have an early memory of the same constellation of feeling of being devalued, taken advantage of being inconsequential? What's the first thing that pops up in your mind?
It's more like a general repetitive experience of, yeah, I do. I have a picture of me with my mom and my brother and my younger brother, and like like he always came first. And we always bowed to my brother. Like my mom would even ask me to make his bed for him and like do all this stuff for him. And I always felt like he was more important than me.
Right. Okay.
And it goes all the way back to when he was born.
Right. Yeah. So in that memory, in that experience, what did you conclude that meant about you?
Well, I didn't matter.
Right, exactly. Right. Yeah. So it's all of those same things you're experiencing now with this trigger from this client.
Mm-hmm.
You don't matter. You're inconsequential. You're devalued. You don't matter. Can you see that was a conclusion that was unavoidable at that time? I mean, that little Linda didn't have a whole lot of options in terms of what she experienced and what she felt that it meant about her, right?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't matter and I didn't have value.
Right.
And that's really tied into this client because this client is my biggest income I get the biggest part of my income from this client, right? Right? Like perfect. Right. So
yeah.
I can see it's a conclusion. Yeah. I can see it has nothing to do with them. I mean, I decided that, but I can see it has nothing to do with me. It's not true.
The little girls felt that was her experience. And mommy was your biggest client then. She was your well-being.
She was the one who provided.
Yeah, she's the one throwing it to us, right? Yeah. So that conclusion was unavoidable. but you can see anything that we can see, even though the other day I was working with somebody and I said, it's like you plastered on a label, a Band-Aid of sorts that's stuck to your flesh and it says, I don't matter. Right? So now that creates a frequency that was installed. And through that installation, the frequency of I don't matter creates a distortion field. And then your world is going to be showing up
Mhm.
and as a manifestation of that frequency. And not a lot of the times that we notice are typically on the bad end of the stick. But even though there's a polarity there, it's always underpinned by I don't matter. Even when we're on top of the world and we're the most important thing going on in the group, right?
Mhm.
Underneath that is still that earliest conclusion, I don't matter. So if you can see that, and you do, you can see
Mhm.
that conclusion, that identity that was installed, right? Can you imagine or experience the bright light of awareness on that conclusion?
Yes,
Yeah, go ahead.
and I can also see how that created the whole constellation around, that's like the linchpin between me and money, because
Mhm.
I won't explain it, but I get the connection.
Perfect.
So
Yeah.
I see that it was the conclusion.
Mhm.
I see it's not true. It's what I had to come up with
Absolutely.
to make
Unavoidable.
sense.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't matter. Like it's totally like dollar signs.
Right.
Totally get it.
Exactly. That's right.
Mhm.
When am I going to get mine? Right. If I don't matter, I'm probably in trouble. Yeah. So the forgiveness again is like the awareness is the light of who I am, my true nature, your true nature, and it's shining on that conclusion. And that what's happening is I like to think of the conclusion now is rather like an app on the iPhone screen. It's about to be deleted, right? It's going like, it's quivering, you know. So just imagine that that's all being called into question through
Yeah.
the bright light of awareness. And as you forgive yourself for believing that, it's to come home. It's like you come home to that little girl, right? It's like that could never be true. You are now showing up to relieve her of that lie. You are going to relieve her of that imposed self-judgment that has been a strand of, I mean, I know the stories you could tell us throughout your whole life.
Yeah.
That's where the installation occurred. At least that's the place that we can uncover it and then dissolve it. It doesn't apply to you. It was unavoidable for that little Linda, but it's not true. It's just not true.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I love that image you gave of the app, like before it
Yeah.
dissolves, because I feel like when I just blast this with a light of awareness,
Exactly.
it just starts to fragment.
Exactly. That's right.
Wow.
That's right. Yeah, the to yourself, it's I know who I am. I know who I am. That was unavoidable at the time. I understand it all. I put the light on it and it's gone. It's forgiven. It's been dispelled.
Mhm.
So powerful. Thank you, sweetheart.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Linda. Okay, Nina, we have a few more minutes here.
Where's Nina?
She's coming, just 1 second. There we go.
Okay, there. Hi. Yeah, I don't know. I have so many things, so many questions. So I think that rather than ask a question, I'll ask you another time. I'm going to tell you a story of success around this work.
Yay.
It just happened a few minutes ago, and I think I can tell it quickly. So I work with private clients, helping them develop scripts for performance, theater, film, publication. And I have run into trouble in the past because I haven't been clear about a contractual agreement about derivative projects or how I get credit or And I tried a couple of years ago with a client to do that, and she had a hissy fit, even though what I was asking for was very minimal and kind of industry standard. So I know this has been a problem for years, and I haven't known how to address it. And a friend was talking to me the other day, a little bit harshly, but in a good way, and said, you've got to get your contracts with your clients. And I went, okay. So I called the lawyer I work with, and I said, I've got to do this because I'm working with a handful of clients, well, a couple of clients now who have projects that could become grander than they are at the moment. And so she sent it to me yesterday. I looked at it today. And it's not quite there yet, but I emailed 2 clients and I said, okay, this is going to be happening. We're going to make an agreement about credit and compensation and ancillary project and copyright, intellectual property. I was terrified. But a part of me was going, this is what Pali means by working, however you say it, working for your
On behalf.
yeah, and that's been so hard around this for a million reasons, right? Of all the things you're addressing. And my client, one of them instantly wrote back and he thanked me. And thank you so much. When I've worked in film, I've expected something like this, but I didn't think a performance would generate. Like to him, it made him seem like the project had great potential.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Which is another way of viewing it. Not that I'm trying to
Exactly.
take something away, but I'm saying this could be important. Let's
Exactly.
put our ducks in a row. He was so excited and so grateful that it shifted,
Mhm.
it just shifted the whole paradigm of what I was up to. Yeah, so thank you. That was really,
Beautiful. Yeah, it does make a point of that. When we're on our own side, we are upright, we're true north, and we benefit everything. That's not what it feels like, because when we were accommodating a parent or trying to do whatever codependent thing we did in order to make things okay out there, we were of a frequency that didn't serve. But now, true north, on your own behalf, you benefit everything. And that was just an expression of the benefit, right? Very specific.
yeah, it was a very good little teaching that was a huge internal shift.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing, Nina. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We're going to shift into meditation. Before we do, I just want to take a moment to thank you, Pali,
My
and
pleasure.
invite you to make a donation to Pali if you're able to do that. And anything else? No? Okay, so you're welcome to stay, or you're welcome to.
Well, I think
just 1 second. It's not, how do we make a donation?
I'll send you the information. It's on the email.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Polly.
Yeah, and anybody who's on here, I'm available for phone sessions. I'm in a kind of a flux right now, but we can do the work together. Phone sessions work really well with this work. It's not dependent on person to person, although I love that too, whenever any of you are on Maui. So feel free to engage with me, and let's redream this reality together. Yes.
Good night, Mom Polly.
Good night, sweetheart.
Bye, Polly. Thank you.
Bye-bye, sweetie.